Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Dome Runners TV. I'm your host, Crimson Oracle. This is my fur cat, Omar. And it's like he knows now that when I'm recording, he can come over and specifically get attention. So when I pull the camera out, he's suddenly much more interested. Today, I'm going to be running you through the process by which I made 2 ash waste vehicles from Diecast Cars that I got for about $6 or $7 each at the local drugstore. These are metal vehicles, and they are painted in a very thick, glossy paint. So I used a particular technique that I like to get around that issue, which is covering the model almost entirely in other things, so that there's very little of the original paint job left at the end for you to paint over. And you'll get a glimpse of the exact process by which I did that in just a few minutes. This is part of a series that I'm calling the Road to the Nova Open. This is a particularly fun one because the ash waste stuff just got announced fully, and we are going to be having ash waste tables at the Nova Open. And if you do not have space in your luggage for vehicles, the good news is that I will have an array of vehicles available for people to choose from when it comes to setting up their particular warband or their gang when they go into battle on an ash waste board. You will be able to use the vehicles that I have if you don't want to bring your own. Of course, we don't know exactly what the rules are going to look like yet, so I'm going to be updating as we go. As with anything involving a new release, I'm assuming that there will be a playable amount of rules out by Nova based off of when they're announcing this, but barring that, there will be vehicle rules either way. I'm hoping to be able to use just the official ones. I'm hoping they're comprehensive enough, but if we have to supplement them, we have to supplement them. And if they're not out yet, then we'll go with a do-it-yourself kind of approach. But I am really excited to show off some of the stuff that I'm making for Nova, and I'm really excited to show you this trick to, save a little bit of cash if you are interested in getting into the ash waste environment, but you don't want to potentially spend, $50-$60 per vehicle. This is going to be a way that a lot of us can more easily access that kind of game. So take a look, enjoy, and I'm really excited to be covering this release and talking more about it, because I really think this is going to be, just another awesome way to experience the best game that Games Workshop and, in my opinion, any other skirmish gaming company makes. I think that Necromunda is just the best. So, I'm biased. I've done 55 episodes of podcast about this particular game, and I'm still finding plenty of more material to cover over time. So, you get to kind of fall in love with something you spend that much time with. But beyond that, I am really happy to be on this platform and in this channel. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. I was kind of nervous about getting into it, and I just couldn't be happier with how it's going. So thank you all for, watching and subscribing and liking my videos. I really appreciate it. Share videos with your friends that you find interesting. I should have a new battle report out on Monday. That would be the sixth week in a row of weekly battle reports. I don't know if I can keep that up forever, but it's definitely something that I've been trying to squeeze in. If I can manage to get 2 recorded this weekend, I feel like the odds of there being an 8th or a 7th in a row go up greatly. But in the meanwhile, please enjoy my take on how to build ash waste vehicles from Diecast Cars. So we started with these extremely simple diecast cards you can pick up pretty much any drugstore in my experience in the US. I don't have a lot of experience going to drugstores in other countries. You can see my little Slanesh candle lid. My spouse got me those awesome Warhammer candles. I was not, they were overpriced and silly, but they're fun. And sometimes fun is worth paying a little extra. So I like to take the vehicles completely apart. I find that it's easier to make modifications when they're all apart, and I do like to do some painting on the interiors just to ensure that if any of it is visible, that it looks okay. I also make a point of removing the wheels, or I'm sorry, the tires from the wheels, because they are usually made of rubber, and that will not react well to the paints that you are going to be using. Acrylics just don't work very well on rubberized surfaces, so if you were to apply them, then you wind up with something of a mess on your hands. I keep a gigantic bits box stacked with stuff that I use to do all of these kinds of conversion projects. It is specifically for this kind of kit bash project. As you can see, it's all sort of weird vehicle parts, panels, wheels, tires, spikes, rams, bulldozer, plows, whatever. I take all those parts, I find the ones that I think will work best, and then I kind of work through. Now, for the car, I like to do kind of a exposed engine kind of thing on some of the vehicles because I think it's, hot roddy and fun. And it also is a chance to kind of give you a look at the weird sort of sci-fi stuff that, these engines run on. They're not the same as the normal things. And I like to use, save bits of round sprue if you ever get any, because they're very useful. I also am using here plasticard, which is taken from a yard sale sign, and the corrugated paper that you see, which I prefer to corrugated plasticard, actually, surprisingly. A lot of people use corrugated plasticard, but I find that it's harder to manipulate than the corrugated paper. And since you're going to be covering everything in a coating of PVA, glue in one of these steps, I find that it doesn't make a big difference between using plastic or paper because it's going to be saturated by the glue. Now here you're seeing me use needlepoint mesh. That's what that sort of a grid pattern that you see is. It's a plastic mesh that they sell at craft stores, people who do needlepoint work. And what's cool about it is that it's very inexpensive and it's made of plastic that will take paint, although it's a little trickier to get it to stay on than with certain other plastics. But it will take paint, you can make it work, and it's amazing for making floors and that kind of stuff. Now you're seeing me cover everything with coating of PVA glue, very fine sand, coarse sand, and flock, crucially. I find that mixing flock into my texture paint mix makes a massive difference. Now I'm using an airbrush here to paint these black as a base coat and then white from above. You can do this with rattle cans very easily. And as you can see, I use a brown craft paint for this step, as I find that the sort of coating of things with a color, it's just wasteful to use expensive modeling paints for something like this where you're really trying to glop it on, because the goal here is to create kind of a messy basis for you to build off of. You're going to get everything kind of a brownish color, and then from there you're going to build on that brown to do various things. As you can see, I'm bringing in white so I can use contrast on those seats. And while that dries, I start working on the van. A very similar kind of process on the van. One thing that you'll notice that I'm doing is I use these little nail art beads that are sort of this semicircle kind of thing. And they work perfectly as rivets. It's time consuming to apply them, in large scale on a model like this. But I find that they add just that little extra detail that makes a big difference between something looking okay and something looking finished. I personally feel that way anyway. I like to cover the wheel wells. I feel like it's more likely that they would be using covered wheel wells. Here I am trimming a rhino hatch. I probably will eventually put a heavy stubber in front of that, because I think that the larger vehicles, the trucks and vans and that sort of thing, should have multiple weapons, whereas I think that one weapon on the sort of more coupe ash runner style vehicles makes sense. Even at 10 times speed, this process slows down a little bit as you sort of start to handle all the little scraps and everything. I like to mix it up a little bit. You'll see that there's a hubcap, there is a bunch of tread, that kind of stuff. I feel like makes it look a little bit more like they're scavenging and they're making armor out of whatever they can find. But that's, that's the sort of thing that I really get tickled by incorporating into my build. So personally, I'm a fan. It's important to remember to get all the parts. That way you don't, pop something back on later and realize that it looks out of place. Like, oh, these doors don't have any armor or paneling on them, but every other part of the van does. I cannot stress enough how wonderful adding rivets to your builds is in terms of making them pop visually. It's essential. And I tend to be pretty sloppy with all this stuff because the glue will leave, sort of indentation, not indentations, but like texture behind. And I think that it's interesting because it kind of looks like weld marks, and it can really enhance the overall look of something like this to have sort of inexplicable, lumpy, messy kind of stuff like you get with super glue that cures. And so obviously I coat everything once again with the texture goop and get it all glued up and ready to go so that I can get it painted. Also remember to get those tires off. More leather seats. It might be silly, but I like to give leather seats to the poor Necromundans. They suffered enough, I really like the Vallejo air metal paints. I find that they work really well, both with a brush and through the airbrush. So I tend to use those as my default for metallics lately. And more of the craft paints in the orange. I really like this orange a lot. It is a kind of an ugly color, but in a way that's perfect for this kind of build. it's important to glue everything in. I lost some of the screws, so I wound up having to kind of make do. Oh, and getting the tires back on. It's not actually as easy as it sounds. I'm putting the wrong bottom on this chassis, by the way. That's why I'm having so much trouble with it. I would discover this later and fix it after gluing it on. Thankfully, it popped off easily still. So same deal, the brown craft paint, the orange craft paint, the Vallejo, Game Air, silver. Actually, no, it's not Game Air. It's like, where are you? Vallejo acrylic metal color airbrush colors. These are my go-to for any kind of metallic. Also, if you notice in the background, you've got my bottle of Wild Snake that I made using my Robo Cutter. It's kind of a fun little thing, a little prop that I'm going to be using in an upcoming video, my next video essay, where I'm going to be drinking as I record. So that will be fascinating for everybody involved, I think. Hopefully I managed to keep it together, but we will see. It's essential now what we're doing to get a nice undercoat, because what we're going to do is we're going to sponge chips of paint on top so that it looks like this model was originally painted a specific color, but then found itself not able to be that color due to erosion. This one will be red, just for a little bit of variety. And now we're going to use my custom wash, which is made with a little bit of black ink, a little bit of brown ink, a lot of medium, and flow improver. So I'm going to wash the models. There, I'm fixing that issue at the bottom. All right, yep, you're going to see me come in here, nice thick gloppy coating of wash, get everything nice and grimy and yuck. And then while the wash is still drying, and this is one of my tricks, I like to come in with a bit of pigment. In this case, it's Vallejo Desert Dust, which I think is a nice sort of light color for doing ash waste stuff. And as you'll notice, what I'm doing along the way is I'll use a bit of wash and pigment together to form this sort of clumpy paste, and apply that into the sort of cracks and crevices, which gives you a little bit more of a texture and a feeling that like this is caked on dirt. And of course, it's important to, clean your workspace when you're done. And after a quick coat of varnish, here they are, 2 road-ready ash waste vehicles done in only a course of a couple of hours. And I think a lot of fun for adding variety and flavor to your battlefields. Thank you so much for watching. This is going to do it for the episode. Thanks to my patrons for making this show possible. And of course, if you're interested in helping support the show, you can find me on Patreon. As well, you should check out the podcast